Moments after appearing at an anti-Kremlin rally and urging voters to boycott the March presidential poll, Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is wrestled into a patrol wagon by police. Yemen's Saudi-backed Prime Minister appeals to Arab countries and the United Arab Emirates especially to save Aden from falling to southern separatists who've seized large parts of the city. And as more than 200 French towns struggle against floodwaters, Paris remains on alert, with the swollen Seine inching ever higher. Forecasters say water levels should peak overnight before receding. Thank you for watching France 24. I'm Nadia Sharbi. Wrestled to the ground and bundled into a police vehicle, Alexei Navalny is once again in custody this Sunday. The Russian opposition leader had been addressing hundreds of demonstrators in Moscow, urging them to boycott the upcoming presidential poll in March and rejecting the election as rigged in favour of President Vladimir Putin. The Moscow rally was part of nationwide protests called by Navalny. Our correspondent Thomas Lowe has the latest.
Hundreds of people here continue to walk down the central street called Tverskaya Ulitsa, carrying banners, waving Russian flags and yelling chants as well, like Putin is a thief and Russia will be free. This meeting hasn't been made legal by the mayor of Moscow, and that means that people are having to walk up and down this street in the hope of not being arrested. One person who has been arrested here in Moscow is Alexei Navalny, the opposition leader himself. He was bundled off into a police van as he arrived on Tverskaya Ulitsa, just 400 meters from where I am now. He'll appear in court in 2 days' time, and he faces up to 13 days in jail for organizing an illegal meeting. As it is right now, people that I've been speaking to saying they're not ready to go home. This demonstration is planned to last only 3 hours. We're almost at that mark now. But people, as you can hear, really still in this, not ready to go home, not ready to leave the streets. They want their voices heard, not just in Moscow, but demonstrations happening and have happened in more than 100 cities, we're told, across the country. Human rights organizations estimate that some 5,000 people have come out across the country.
Well, for more on this, let me turn to my guest, human rights activist Nadezhda Kutepova, who's been living as a political refugee here in France since July 2015. Hello, thank you for being with us on France 24. Isn't the Kremlin perhaps bolstering Navalny's image and support with these multiple arrests?
You think that maybe authority really doesn't understand what is happening now, because when the one person takes authority for many years, one moment this person began to think that maybe it's forever, and for this reason, for him, it has not reason, it has not meaning. The popularity of Navalny is more or less. He feels he's in a power.
And the turnout for today's nationwide protests, as we heard from our correspondent, there is about 5,000 people across Russia. That is lower than previous demonstrations. Why is that, do you think?
You know that the people in the region, they're not glad by the situation, because the situation is much more worse now than before, and that even the weather in most Russian cities, it's minus 20, 30 degrees today. They have decided to go in the street to protest against dishonest election. They want that their life will be changed. They don't want this stability. They want to protest. They want to have a choice. They have no choice.
And yet, as you're saying, Vladimir Putin does look set to be re-elected. What is his human rights record?
You know that, first of all, I think that today we had not so many violence on the street, and the much slogans of people were also the police with us. Police should be together with us. And I think that sometimes Vladimir Putin does not understand that situation should be changed, and maybe he thinks that if police does not beat the people, it's already human rights for him. But in any case, the agenda of Russia should be changed.
And how does your NGO address these issues?
You know that now it's not a good period for my NGO. We continue to fight in European Human Rights Court for honest name of our organization. I remind that my NGO were accused in espionage and admitted like a foreign agent NGO. At the same moment, many Russian NGO helped today for Russian protesters. They observed the situation and they accompany the people who were arrested, and they will continue to do it. And I think that we should have the changes of society, and we should have a right to change our president, even if he does not want.
Nadezhda Kutepova, thank you very much for having spoken to us.
Thank you.
The coalition and Arabs as a whole must move to save the situation, and the hope as we see it in the government is on the Emirates. Yemen's Prime Minister took to Facebook this Sunday to appeal to his allies to save President Abdurabu Mansour Hadi's interim capital Aden from falling to southern separatists, whose fighters have seized large parts of the city in heavy clashes against government forces. Catherine Viet explains.
Gunfire rings out in the streets of Aden. Clashes between separatists and government forces injure dozens. The separatists, known as the Southern Transitional Council, say they've seized control of several government buildings in the city. The one-time allies are now calling for the ouster of Prime Minister Abed bin Dagar, accusing the government of failing to keep its promises.
The country has been driven to famine, and some people, including the people who oppose the Hadi government, blame the government and want Hadi to change the government to stem the tide of famine and chaos in southern Yemen.
The country has been embroiled in a brutal civil war for the past 3 years, with Houthi rebels in control of the capital Sana'a in the north of the country. It's created a severe humanitarian crisis. The UN says a child dies every 10 minutes. 8 million are on the brink of starvation. It's these dire conditions that have caused a rift between the southern separatists and the government forces. The Saudi-led coalition, which supports Yemen's government in its fight against the Houthis, has called for calm and self-restraint.
The 30th Annual African Union Summit has opened in Addis Ababa, with African heads of state gathering in the Ethiopian capital. Among the many issues to be addressed, the 55 member countries could adopt a joint statement condemning US President Donald Trump's recent slur on the continent. Our reporter Nicolas Germain sends us this.
One of the main themes discussed here this Sunday was conflict resolution, and the president of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki, said, for example, that in South Sudan, the time for sanctions against all those who prevented peace had come. And he said this while the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir, was in the room. A little later on, it was the new Liberian president, George Weah, who spoke, and he received a very warm reception. And then it was the new Zimbabwean president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, who spoke. And interestingly, he paid homage to his predecessor, Robert Mugabe, the man he helped push towards the exit. And when he mentioned the name Mugabe, well, he got a long round of applause. Finally, one story that's getting big here is the one broken by Le Monde newspaper, which says that China actually spied on this African Union building for several years using bugs and computers. I asked several African presidents, the president of Liberia, Kenya and Niger, what they thought about this story. They all said no comment, but it's clearly a story that's going to get bigger in the coming weeks.
Catalonia's political crisis continues to play out, with a separatist lawmaker indicating this Sunday that fugitive ex-president Carles Puigdemont will follow the recommendation of Spain's Constitutional Court and request permission from a Spanish judge to attend a parliamentary session in Barcelona on Tuesday. That's when lawmakers will attempt to form a new regional government. But Puigdemont fled to Belgium after Catalonia's parliament made an unsuccessful declaration of independence last October. This in violation of Spain's constitution. As a result, he is wanted in Spain on possible rebellion and sedition charges. French forecasters say the River Seine should reach its highest level later this Sunday, with the capital still on alert and some 200 towns and villages already struggling against floodwaters. In total, around 1,000 people have been evacuated from their homes in the Greater Paris region. Pierre Delrieux reports.
As the River Seine reaches record levels, the city's fire department's nautical patrols are on high alert. In front of the Eiffel Tower, a boat owner is in need of their assistance.
Did you call us?
Yeah, I did.
We're going to dock and come aboard.
With the rising water levels, this man's boat has drifted and is now threatening to hit an electrical panel. A diver heads down to assess the situation. The water temperature is 5 degrees Celsius.
Is the hull on top of the deck?
Yeah, I can touch the deck with my foot.
Try pushing the boat away.
To avoid any damage, the houseboat has to be manually repositioned. On the swollen River Seine, the other main hazard to handle is floating debris. With the flood, their numbers have multiplied.
This is one of the dangers caused by the floods. It's rough lumber floating. A big piece of wood, mostly underwater. That can be dangerous. That can cause real damage to a boat when it hits the hull or gets caught in a propeller at a certain speed.
And there's also the occasional careless wanderer.
Bonjour, monsieur.
Good morning, sir. Where are you headed? You're going around the island?
Kayaking on the River Seine is strictly forbidden during the flood. But these firemen can only issue a warning.
We told him about the dangers. Now it's up to him. It's his responsibility.
The firemen's heightened surveillance and patrolling of the river will continue until the floods recede.
In sports news, the fairy tale continues. For us, for me, it's incredible. I got a bit lucky tonight, I think. Those are the words of an emotional and humble Roger Federer, who claimed a record-equalling 6th Australian Open title this Sunday after surviving a second-set freeze and an onslaught from Croatia's Marin Cilic. And for more on this, I can turn to my sports editor, Simon Harding, who joins me in the studio. Simon, hello, thank you for being with us. This is Federer's 20th Grand Slam, and he certainly had to fight for it.
He had to fight for it, absolutely. He beat Cilic 6-2, 6-7, 6-3, 3-6, 6-1, a 5-set thriller in just over 3 hours. His 20th Grand Slam, as you rightly said, his 6th Australian Open, so he equals Novak Djokovic and Emerson's record of the most Australian Open titles won. And it's just, as you were saying, incredible. Federer, very emotional, broke down in tears at the end of his interview, really choking up. And I think what's incredible is the longevity of what he's done. His first Grand Slam title came in 2003, so 15 years ago. He had a very difficult period where he didn't win anything from 2012 to 2017, last year, when he won his the Australian Open and, of course, Wimbledon later on. People were writing him off, saying he was too old. Federer, who's of course 36 now, and therefore it's an amazing achievement, one after the other. It's everyone's a bit lost for words, including myself, because we can't really believe what's going on.
That's right, it's quite an incredible comeback.
Absolutely, the comeback continues. It keeps going on. In 2017, like I said, he won the Australian Open and Wimbledon. He, of course, missed out on the whole clay season, which is one of the major questions now, because will he be able to maintain or to take back the world's first spot, which is currently held by Rafael Nadal. Of course, Federer is the record holder of that, having been number one in the world for 302 weeks, 237 consecutive weeks. So the question is, what is he going to do now? How is he going to continue playing this phenomenal tennis, arguably his best in his career? And therefore, we're wondering what his next step is going to be. But the comeback has been incredible, and hopefully still more to continue.
And you'll be watching, so
absolutely.
Thank you very much, Simon Harding. That's how we're leaving this edition. Stay tuned to France 24.